put your hand in. Hello. All right. So what does that look like to you? A post-racial America?
I assume by definition when people say post-racial, it's kind of like where race isn't a factor or it doesn't affect how society moves or thinks of people. Kind of like everyone's equal or there's equity regardless of their race.
I agree.
It makes my throat hurt. Post-racial in my head sounds just like colorblind, so that's what that would look like if it ever happened.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Horrible thing for me.
Yes.
For me. So yeah, what would it look like in?
For me, I don't know why I'm thinking of like one of those really cheesy scenes from Teen Titans, the cartoon one that we saw when we were growing up, and it's like unicorns and daisies.
Yeah.
Like all these perfect things that would make my heart feel so good, but not realistic.
Right.
But
A utopia,
for the
if
definition
you will.
that you gave, like that's what I think of, yeah. Is it something? I don't know.
What does that look like to you?
You stole my words. Utopia, the unicorns, the daisies. I don't know if we're answering the question about whether or not it's possible or whether we can foresee it.
Oh, no,
not
we're just
yet.
defining
Not
now
yet.
what
So
we think a
that's
post-racial
the
America is.
definition.
Yeah, that's what it looks like in my mind if that such a thing was to occur.
To me, it would there would be different separators. You know, it wouldn't be based on race. Right now, race is probably one of the biggest separators, dividers right now. But I think that humankind, humanity will find a way to separate itself into different types of groups and to still have different types of societies that it's one against another, and that one discriminates against another. It could be because they're left-handed. It could be something as simple as you know, they have knock knees, like like something.
You're pigeon-toed.
Yeah,
Go away.
I literally was saying pigeon-toed in my head.
Yeah, I
Somebody like
personally,
that.
yeah, I just think that it would look like the same human instincts would still be present.
Yeah.
So it's in our nature to divide.
It's in our nature to divide.
We'll dig deeper into that.
Yeah.
So now that we defined what we envision a post-racial, it sounds pretty synonymous. The different descriptions. Who in this room would argue that a post-racial America is not possible? Just by a show of hands, just so I can see. Okay, great.
Oh, Aaron and Terrence, you holding it down.
Tim, start off with your clan over there.
Post-racial America. That means I would have to get over my race, and that's never gonna happen. Like, being black is first and foremost who I am, and for me to be living in a post-racial society, I would be synonymously ignoring my history, ignoring my past, ignoring where I came from, and every day I'm living someone's legacy. Like, I can't call on their names because of slavery and all these different things, but they still matter. And so I feel like being black really dictates a lot of my decisions, my goals in life, the things that I do. So to be in a post-racial society, I would have to give that up. And that's just not happening, period.
I don't know if anybody remembers the Tommy Lauren phase that we went through on social media. But I remember when Trevor Noah had her on his show, and for an interview, and somewhere in the interview she was saying, "I don't see color."
Exactly.
And he said, "Oh, well, what do you do at a traffic light?" And,
Right.
and the point behind that is kind of like what I'm hearing you say is that I want, like, we're not asking you to not see color. Like, I actually want you to see that I am black.
Yeah.
But I also want you to see that I am black, and because I'm black, I have these certain unique qualities about me that need to be recognized and need to be acknowledged and considered when you're making decisions on healthcare, education, politics, judicial, and all the other parts of society that make it possible for us to
Even when you're
survive.
trying to talk to me, acknowledge
Right.
my culture and my history. There's certain things you shouldn't say. There's certain things that I shouldn't say to you based off of your culture and who you are. So yeah, what do you think?
Okay.
For me, I think that as long as we have individuals that are in that mindset of like, I'm different or I'm superior or I'm beneath, because some people will internalize that, we're going to continue to have generations who will learn that. It may go down, but I don't think it'll ever go away. Just like you have people kids now, people our age that don't know how to write cursive, but I know how to write cursive because my parents showed me how to do it. So as long as there's parents out there teaching these kind of beliefs and like making sure that kids know that they're different than other people, I think that that's going to be a hindrance on whether or not we can have a post-racial society. But I do agree with Tiffany as far as like, I don't want to get rid of who I am, my identity, the how I identify myself, how my son identifies. Like literally every decision that I make is based off of, you know, who I am, but also how do others perceive me because of how I look or because of how I talk or because of my family or how I'm, you know, all these different aspects of me. And it just becomes you. Yeah. You know, so I don't think it's something that I would want to give up because I'm really proud of it. So I think that too will play a part in like post-racial. Like, who would want to give that identity up if it's so full?
People who don't have an identity. That's the ones that's usually saying we should be in a post-racial society. Is when they don't have a specific culture that they can cling to.
All lives matter.
Oh yeah, that kind of thing.
Only one race is the human race.
That's so cringy.
Favorite.
Put some salt in your food and stop talking. That's how I feel.
How you feeling, Tahirah?
Oh, I'm loving it. So now do I get to say more?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess I would suggest that it's really a naive thought to think that we can be in a post-racial society. And I don't know if the question is post-racial America or post-racial world or post-racial society.
America.
Okay, so a post-racial America when America, as we know it, was established based on separation of race.
Yeah.
And until we've actually recognized that, framed that, owned it, and addressed it, a post-racial nothing occurs. So to say that we're all colorblind or the human race erases years and years of inequality, of codified laws that have oppressed Black and brown bodies as recent, and I'm talking about going back to the days of slavery, the 60s, and today. And to me, when we look at any injustice that happens on the basis of race, it's a reset button. So if somebody says, well, slavery was over in the 1800s, to me it starts fresh every day with every new injustice directed at a Black and brown person. I'm talking about codified actual laws. I'm talking about the mass incarceration of Black and brown girls, boys, women, and men. And as this happens, we start over fresh. We're not post anything. We're still right there in the thick of it. It's just become more sophisticated. And now we're realizing, and we're talking about it, we're able to talk about it thanks to social media, thanks to knowing that we stand together in community with people who believe like us, and we can say things that are unpopular. And right now, we're having these conversations around race. One, it's inevitable. Two, we also probably feel more empowered than I have in my life, and I'm 43 years old. But I'm guessing that no, we're not going to experience any kind of post-racial America. I mean, after the Civil War, was there post-racial America? No, we had Reconstruction, and that was destroyed. Black and brown people were still being kidnapped and enslaved. Immediately after the Civil War, after the emancipation of Black people. No, that wasn't a post. That didn't work out so well either.
Can we say that race relations have progressed in some manner since slavery?
I don't know what that even means. I don't know what that means to say that. Has it evolved? Yes. But have there been actual schemes designed to box out Black and brown people from this country's wealth? Yes.
Always.
So has it progressed? No.
Because I asked that because usually when you would ask someone who is all lives matter or who is one of those individuals that follow that quote that I mentioned earlier, their whole thing is, well, at least you're not picking cotton anymore. Like, at least you get to
thanks,
go,
NASA.
at least, right? Like,
Say that.
like at least you get to go. Your kids get to go to college, and you at least you get to become a lawyer or decide what career you want, or make money off your labor now. Like, at least you don't have to go back to that anymore.
The schemes have changed.
Mm-hmm.
The schemes have changed. Okay, I was talking
But
to.
it's still schemes.
There's still schemes, and they're designed
Mm-hmm.
to box out black and brown people. I was talking to a young man recently who had he described to me that he was had graduated very high in his class, and he was awarded a full scholarship. But the other students in his class were awarded multiple full scholarships with choices. So we did some quick math, and this student was a black boy. And he was awarded, let's just say, $60,000 a year in a full scholarship. And then the other kids who were not black or brown, let's say if they were ordered 2 and 3 times that much, 4 times that much, they were essentially given $250,000 a year gifts in options.
Mm-hmm.
Let's sit with that for a minute. Graduated in the top of his class, he gets a $60,000 a year gift. They are awarded discretionary funding, we're talking about, where people generally know their demographics, almost $250,000. That's now. That's today.
Yep.
Discretionary monies being handed out, and he was awarded and rewarded for graduating very high in his class, but not as much as he would have if he was the connection and the complexion as the other kids, the majority in the school. We're talking about $250,000 a year in gifts offered to these other students. When you talk about scholarship money,
What do you guys think about? Would you
Um,
want it? Do you not
Yeah,
want it?
no, I do. I just think that America, from the history of America, from the beginning, I think, like if you read articles from like the 1800s, it was if you swap out the word Irish in some of the articles from the 1800s, and you swap it with Puerto Ricans today in Springfield, it's the exact same story.
Yeah.
If you go to the Italians, they were massacred, they were tortured, they weren't getting paid for their labor. The Jewish
Yeah.
people got thrown. They're the originals who got thrown in the ghettos. The ghettos were created for the Jews. So for example, when they have like these KKK rallies, they're talking about kill all Jews.
Yep.
So they also feel like, well, but the minorities consider us white. So what do? You get what I'm saying? And I think that because we are brown and black, that's what we have. That's what we've internalized, and that's who we're around. And our oppression is pretty much the same by the same people. But I think that even in the history, in any history that you read, even like, it's always been separated by the races. It's always been separated by an ideology or a social class. I don't believe that we'll have a day, unless America decided today, like, no longer check the box, no longer tell us who you are or what you are. You're just Americans. That's never going to happen, because there are people who have climbed through the ropes in their eyes, so they feel a little more entitled to these privileges that we don't get, or we might not even know that they exist, until one of us gets in there and hopefully does the right thing and spreads the wealth and resources. So, it's kind of like a game of who gets there first. And we're like fighting at the door after they close the door, and it's kind of like, do you build your own system, or do you keep trying to be a part of a system that doesn't want you to be part of the system?
Well, that's my stance. I say we build, because my stance has been that it's not necessary to aim towards a post-racial America. It's not. It shouldn't be a priority, because I think it's kind of like a dead dream. It's like, whether it's possible or not, I'm not interested in it. I'm more interested in the welfare and strength and building power within the community, within my own people. I think America will be just fine if every one of those different demographic groups, different communities, had the same equal access towards their own individual power, their own individual say-so, and how they're educated, the type of healthcare they're getting, and all the other entities of society for survival that give us our basic necessities. And I'm not willing to give up, as Tia and Tiffany had mentioned. I'm not willing to give up all the organizations that we have now that have been doing great work for specifically black communities, because that's what a post-racial America would mean. I'd have to give up my letters. I work hard for my letters. I go to Phi Theta, by the way.
What? How are they not HBCU anymore? What do you mean?
Right, we have to get rid of HBCUs, and by the way, it's a false narrative. It's a false statement that HBCUs are only for black people. They make the assumption that they only accept black students.
White people
when that's,
go there?
They can
White people
if they
get the
like
money.
to.
They get the scholarship money to go there.
For obvious reasons, another topic, another day. But for obvious reasons, they're not a part of the majority of the population.
Yeah.
But organizations like that have built power and awareness within our communities that so we can grow. Like when you go to the North End, they got their own thing going on over there. They have their own stores with their own people in there. They have their own establishments. They have their own people in there. Like the mom that just came here from Puerto Rico, she lives in North End. She don't got to worry about having to translate at Family Dollar or the CVS because her own people live in that community. I think that's beautiful. I think that's how things should happen. Like it should be a working melting pot, and I think there's a way that we can do that, not in a harmonious way. Like there's always gonna be problems, but at least in a more equal access kind of way. Like just give me an equal chance to get to the treasure. Like, you know, that's kind of like that picture, that meme I seen where it was like a black girl and it was a white man.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? And there's like a finish line in the picture in the cartoon. And in her path, there was a bunch of alligators and spikes.
Mm-hmm.
For him, it was a clear path. He could have skipped and still made it quicker.
And I think that that's.
She had a ball and chain.
Yeah, she did have a ball and chain.
Low key, I think that was marriage, but that's going to be.
I think the best part of that is his quote for it is, "Why are you complaining? It's the same distance."
Right. Yeah.
That's very important.
That's funny.
I think one of the problems that we have as far as like we talk about getting to certain places, maybe economically, just to talk economically, is because we have to basically also correct people and also share our emotions. Like, look, we're oppressed people.
Yeah.
And they don't. And I'm not gonna say, when I say they, it's not pointed at anybody specifically, but people who don't come from oppression, they can just go straight into, you know, I want to study, or I want this money to do this. I want to open a business. Whereas we're gonna come in and say, because I'm oppressed, my business is going to target helping the oppressed rise. Where they're like, all right, my business is nails, and we're gonna sell these nails cross country, and we don't have to talk about anything else, and they can just go.
Right.
Whereas we're always gonna have some passion behind it
and some responsibility.
And and like you said, people are watching us, so you know we might let somebody cross the street just so they know we're not all aggressive or you know whatever it is. So I just think that
for me,
we have more roadblocks. So.
I agree. I think a big issue with this discussion is as soon as we talk about post-racial anything, we always go to what are Black and Latino and every brown body gonna do? Like, what are their lives gonna be like after this post-racial society? But what are white people gonna do after this post-racial society? Like, after... but, they're not gonna use the stone. But, like, my sister went through the history of how it happened after slavery and Reconstruction. They were using the system to their advantage. Welfare wasn't started for us. They were started for white veterans after the Civil War. Then you get to after the New Deal. You think they made all those welfare programs for black people? We couldn't get in line. It was for white people systemically again. Where are we now? In the 80s, we still have people in jail for having a dime bag and having cocaine on them or being a drug addict. Now all of a sudden, being addicted is a disease and we need to have them go to rehab. We need to get this out of the law. So it's like, it's a crisis. Meanwhile, we have mommies, aunties, uncles that had to kick the habit by themselves, pick themselves up literally by the boots that they did not have and go to work. And we're here. So it's like, in a post-racial society, white people will lose. Like, the same way how we got redlined out and couldn't get mortgages and couldn't live in certain neighborhoods, they got to go to the front of the line because they're white. Check off your white. Okay, I can have this conversation with you. I can give you this loan. So it's like we all worried about us in terms of a post-racial society, but I think we've proven that we're going to be all right. It's the whole other side that's going to have to really feel what it's like to be without a system. It's the same thing that's happening right now with automation. Black people and brown people are finding a way to still make their bread and still move on. Whereas we have places all over the Midwest and the Appalachian Mountains that one factory shut down in their town, now everyone's on heroin and can't get anything done. Like, they literally are crippled because there's no system that is supporting them anymore. So this whole post-racial society thing, yeah, black people, we're going to be there, but we are doing well now. We've done well through everything that we have done. It's the white people that when the systems are broken down, what are they going to rely on? They can't just go to the front of the line anymore in a post-racial society.
The way I'm looking at this post-racial society in America is, well, okay, so the first time I ever heard this quote, this,
Can I get my point? I didn't get the drop.
oh yes, please go ahead. From the negation side of the argument,
What? Wow.
the negation.
Oh.
No, that he who
Negation.
he who feels post-racial America,
It's possible.
thou shalt not be possible. Yeah,
Thou shalt not be possible.
No,
I
he
think
thinks
you're
it is
doing the
possible.
I think it
opposite.
is
Yeah, he
possible.
thinks it is
he
possible.
think it is possible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we-
affirmation
Right.
means
Affirmation. My fault.
Oh.
Affirmation.
Just because I think it is possible, first things first, doesn't mean it's likely at all. And the only reason I think it's possible, and I was discussing it a little bit in the group chat, simply because the way that America is a melting pot and everybody's kind of mixing together, the lines between who is what is being blurred. And the only way for it to be post-racial is everybody kind of looked the same. Everybody had similar features where it'd be very hard to actually discriminate against somebody just because of
Physically.
their physical features.
yeah.
On top of that, if this happens 1,000 years from now, like you said, like in 30, 25, people might forget their histories. They might not understand that, hey, in the past, my family went through this and their family went through that, and things were easier for them and things weren't so easy for me, and et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the only way a post-racial society is possible. I just say it is possible. That just means like it's not 0%. It could be 0.001%. I do believe it is possible. And on top of that, I don't think it's necessary, and I personally don't want it. I love diversity. I love people being different. I love people being themselves. And I think it should be possible that people can live harmoniously without being the same.
So let me see if I can gather that together. What I'm hearing from you is that a key part of race is appearance. So eventually, we're just gonna keep mixing and mixing and mixing to a point where race can't be a factor in our lives because we'll be too mixed to be anything. Like it just wouldn't. Like you just can't say black people don't get this, white people don't get this, because white people look like black people look like white people, brown people, yellow people,
Etc. Etc.
et cetera, et cetera.
If that point does come, speaking of what he initially brought up, we'll focus on something else to divide us with.
Right.
Something similar.
Light skin, dark skin.
Light skin.
I'm
dark
assuming that's the next thing.
Yeah,
Maybe
Right.
even guy girl.
We do that
Maybe even guy girl.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
happening
yeah.
now.
Yeah, right.
The light skin, dark skin's
Yeah.
happening now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like
I think that has a longer time being
I
posed.
don't think it'll ever be a utopia or unicorns and cotton candy for everyone. I think it's like just a natural instinct for humans to not necessarily look at what's different, but look at what's the same and then grasp what's the same. And automatically doing that, you automatically ostracize what's different.
Is it possible? So if we go on the notion that a post-racial America is not possible, does it mean that the efforts of all the organizations like NAACP, Black Lives Matter, is a waste of time?
I don't think they're fighting for a post-racial society. I think they're fighting for equity and equality of whatever specific group they're representing. Because
And you can get that without a post-racial society.
you can't have it with a post-racial society because in a
elaborate.
post-racial society, the NAACP doesn't exist.
Correct.
We're not representing colored people anymore. We're representing people. So everything we do would have to be literally applying to everybody. And I just don't think that's
race-wise anyways.
race-wise anyway. I don't think that's how our passions work. I think we have to feel, well, going back to your point, that's a very black and brown thing to do. Like, we have to be motivated by our community or by our block or the people around us to make our decisions. So it doesn't seem like it's something that we would be doing in terms of black and brown people. It seems like people on the outside would be trying to put that on us, saying that this is what we need versus holding on to our community.
I think the thing with that is, if it ever gets to that point, how will we be able to determine who is black and brown when everybody's kind of just mixed together?
I don't see it getting to that point because, like, if you look at Brazil has, isn't it something like 500 racial identities or something wild like that? And Brazil has every color other than the sun. They have every hair type, every texture, and they're all Brazilians. So I'm not sure how genetically possible it is for us to look like a monolith. I don't know. There's just genetics.
I guess we won't
crazy
know
for
until
that.
it happens. I guess,
But I think
we could look at the history in thousands and thousands of years. You could still tell by race who is who.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago, I'm talking about like the Egyptians versus the Spaniards. You knew who was Egyptian. You knew who was a Spaniard. Even right now, we know who a North Korean is.
Yeah.
We just don't know what an American is. And I think that that's something that we don't. Nobody is originally from America. Like, the original American peoples are Native Indians, according to the history that we know, but we all somehow, some way migrated here.
Yeah.
You know, and then we're a melting pot of cultures, a melting pot of emotions, because even our love languages are different. The way we express ourselves through communication, even our body language is different. Even our diseases are different. You know, if you're African American, you might be more prone to like sickle cell anemia. Yeah, you know, and it's all different. You know what I mean? But I think that America is I mean, if you look at it, 80% of our money goes to the military. Let's call it what it is.
ridiculous.
We're just the people who put all the money together and fight the wars for the bigger powerhouses.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that how minuscule we are on that level of playing field, you know, but you know, I do think
got $10,000 right behind me.
And my husband's in the military, so I'm benefiting. Thank you for your tax dollars.
Running cool in the building.
Hey man,
We do love our troops.
hey, we don't. The military, unfortunately, is an organization. At the end of the day, it's an institution.
Yes.
So it being an institution, it has many flaws.
Yes.
Trust me, what I just went through what I just went through
Yeah.
is very flawed with so many aspects of, unfortunately, Caucasians. So with that being stated, knowing that they will view you in a very microcosmic
Correct.
box to say this is all you should be, and then when you elevate, they're like, wait a minute, there's more to you.
Yeah.
Of course there is.
Of course there is. And then the other thing that's gonna hinder the post-racial society is our love for our own cultures, and our love kind of turns into like a separationist type thing as well. So, for example, I say that I'm in an interracial relationship because my husband's African American. I'm West Indian, so like that's a distinct difference in my culture.
Yes.
Being from the Caribbean islands and being black from Africa or being a continental African are completely different.
Wouldn't that be an
And
ethnic
so,
difference than a racial difference?
yeah, it's not a
I
racial
often get
difference.
confused
It's
by the
definitely ethnic,
definitions.
but in terms of like how, if you went to my grandma right now and reminded her that my husband is African American, she would have went off like he was white. Like, it's just that, it's just that separate, and it's the same for continental Africans, and it's the same between the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So it's like there's other things within our culture why you wouldn't necessarily see interracial relationships to the point where we just can't tell the difference between each other as well.
I think the only thing with that is you might dislike each other's ethnicities and races, but people who hate other ethnicities and races, they're just sleeping with their people.
Yeah.
This
Oh
don't- this don't make
no.
you
No. I
universal
wasn't saying
Word.
they hate each other. I was saying in terms of having relationships and merging cultures and things like that to the point where it's like.
Well, the thing is,
same?
they don't have to merge cultures in that. They can just have a baby, and that baby is getting closer to that sameness.
That
Yeah.
sameness. Okay, I see what you're saying. So biologically speaking, as
Yeah,
long as
like-
we're having sex with each other, it's gonna.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I've heard people say, Well, race is a social construct that was created in America. So technically, race doesn't exist, or race is like a fallacy, whatever. It's an oversimplification for a grouping of people. If we go off of that, then if we just dismantle that oversimplification of a grouping of people, wouldn't we be in a post-racial America by just getting rid of that particular term and how we identify a group of people?
I think it's kind of accurate that it is a simplification of a group of people, just because like we're both African American. Well, I'm half Jamaican, half Canadian. You're Terrence Mack.
Just the original.
OG.
I'll be on Ancestry.com very soon.
Exactly. And it's not a bad thing at all. I think it's just it's very hard to get to that sameness and that oneness. Am I switching sides?
Yes, you are. I'm glad you noticed this.
Yeah,
As it was
same as
happening.
possible. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna happen. But just speaking about just people being different. Different is it's a great thing. Like if everybody was the same, we wouldn't get anywhere.
Right.
iRobot.
Ooh.
What was it?
iRobot.
All those robots being the same in alignment, no character.
Yeah, facts.
No character.
Yo, did y'all see the first robot that got citizenship?
Yo,
Did y'all peep her race?
That joint is crazy.
What?
There's
The first robot that got
there's a
citizenship.
female robot from Saudi Arabia.
White woman.
And technically, she has more freedom than Saudi Arabian women.
Hold on. So they made they put white paint on some metal
Oh my God.
and put a hard drive in her.
More like silicone white.
Silicone.
Like
Silicone white. Okay.
She's
Okay.
not peaches.
She's off-white.
She's off white. She's off white. Eggshell white. She's eggshell white.
She looks like a
Also-
personification of Siri.
I'm saying because she's a robot, but yeah. I can see that.
I've never seen what Siri looks like. What does she look like?
Siri
She
is-
doesn't.
Siri is a legitimate person, but yeah.
Siri sounds like what she looks like.
Yeah, and the crazy thing with that is, in Saudi Arabia, they have this law where a woman is required to have, it's not companionship, it's guardianship.
Yeah.
Means a man can step in for her decisions or speaking up for her.
Isn't it if they're strangers too?
Oh God, I hope not.
I feel like
You will not take this last loaf of bread. I say it in her.
like, bro.
Cut it out.
But yeah, and because she's a robot, even though she's a female robot, she doesn't need the guardianship.
That's
So that's
She's
just,
a
that's
robot.
just
She can handle her own.
yeah, issues like this, how are we ever gonna
You would
get
think
to
we
a
learned from
post-racial?
all these sci-fi
man,
movies.
we about to finish.
They all
ourselves.
end the same though.
We about
Hey
to
man,
be
the world's
Like,
gonna
you
end
think
from
we
the 4th to the
learned?
6th. If y'all seen that video,
Huh?
the 4th to the 6th, the world's gonna end.
Oh,
Don't
the
ever-
government
The
shutting
crazy
down,
blackout?
the blackout.
Yes.
blackout.
I just feel like
So just be aware of that.
I will let y'all know there's nothing at my house for you to steal. I'll be in the basement.
You're locked out anyway.
Yeah, I've been there. He's not lying.
Pretty much. Jeez, brother.
I just don't understand the whole after race. Like, why do we want there to be an after?
It's
Unless you're talking about the
Well-
systems that we've created. By we, I'm not taking responsibility. Sorry, that they've created. What is after that we're looking for? Because I'm not gonna be running up to East Long Meadow to go to their parties and live with them. You know what I mean? Like, what is the
I'll look-
post-racial?
I'll speak on behalf of that. And I don't. This is me speaking on
Are you
behalf.
able to do that?
Huh?
Are you able
He
to
said,
do that?
I'll speak on behalf of that.
Because there's
I'll
nobody.
Switch the
I'll
camera
speak
on,
to
you
the
like,
caucus
I'll speak
right
on
now.
behalf of the individual who wants a post-racial America.
Okay.
Because I've had conversations with people like this all the time.
if you can see, he's black.
I've heard David Banner say one time. This is the first time I ever heard this quote.
You talking about the rapper or
The rapper.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another David Banner.
Yes.
That's where he got his name from.
Marvel,
Yeah,
man.
That's where he got his name from.
Oh, I know he's
That,
Doctor.
we have to pause because that's exactly how I feel when my kids are singing Wild Wild Thoughts like it's original song and know nothing about Santa.
No, wait, hold on. Before you kill me, they always call him Dr. Banner. They never say his first name. How am I supposed to know that?
And David Banner.
Well, you don't
I-
read comic books?
Bruce Banner or David Banner.
That's your
They switched his name.
I didn't read back then. I watched the
All public
show.
school issues.
Dr. Banner, calm down. That's all I know.
Chill out, fam.
So David Banner, I once heard David Banner say integration was the worst thing that ever happened to black people in America.
Sounds like that.
Not to argue that point, but just to go off of kind of what he meant by that was that, you know, up until the point where, was it 1964, Civil Rights Act, and everything went from de jure segregation to de facto, and there just wasn't by law no more, and people can go to different schools, and you know we can all use the same bathroom, all that good stuff. And he was stating that it was at that point where we started getting the illusion of inclusion, and started feeling like we're a part of society now. We're getting towards equal justice. So we went a long time without thinking everything's all good and butter. And then every now and then there's these events that happen that wake us back up. And it's unfortunate that it takes those tragedies for us to wake us up. One of them being the Rodney King beating. Yeah. That woke us up. But then we went back to sleep again for a while. And then it was Sean Bell. Then it was Trayvon Martin. And then we were like, okay. There were. But I'm going just based on like I guess, the ones that first come to my mind. And then we were like, oh no, we gotta see it. Then there came the first video one in this past decade.
Fidel Castillo.
He got choked. In New York.
Sterling.
No. Before that, Eric Gardner. Then
Why is there so many?
You
oh
see?
My God.
And it just kept happening one after another. And especially when we got President Barack Obama in office, that's when we really got very sleepy, and you know we started even more hopeful for a post-racial America. And so to answer your question, those who want post-racial America, they're looking for that extra comfort more than what they already have right now. They want to go back to that comfort to where they didn't have to worry about being black and going into the bank, and like it's raining outside, I can put my hoodie on, go into the bank and not feel judged. And that's how I feel like that's how some people feel for a while until that tragedy happens and they're woken up about how people actually see them in this society, and they want to get to a post-racial America to where they can enjoy the same benefits that white people enjoy. And that's why they go off of this whole thing. Like I have a roommate now who's always telling me that we're all just one race and we're a human race and we shouldn't be going off of labels and this and that. And
he's got a gun.
But at the same time, she's always telling me how.
She's trying to introduce her.
But at the same time, she's also always telling me how black women have their specific struggles that need to be addressed. I was like, you can't have us all looking at each other as one human race, but then you want to have you want your individuality to be respected, because every time that you integrate, you're getting rid of that segregation. I envision hopefully America where we can be separate but together at the same time. Like you should be able to have your North End. I should be able to have my Maynard, Eastern Ave, whatever area we decide to become our little Black Wall Street, and be able to build in our own communities and build together and still be cordial, still be humane, still be fair within the judicial system. That's the type of America that I envision. Not necessarily post-racial, but
equal,
post BS. I don't know.
Post BS. I think what you just said was interesting in terms of putting on your hoodie and going into a bank. So this post-racial society means that cultural things in terms of black and brown people are now just accepted. So like I can wear my bamboo earrings and have pink hair and walk into a law office and get a job? Or does that mean I can use Ebonics or the linguistic term African American vernacular and still be considered professional? Right. Is that what post-racial means in terms of like everything cultural? Or I could go and dirty wine and not be considered promiscuous? Like, is that what a post-racial society is?
Speaking again on behalf of them. Speaking again on behalf of them, they would say no. Like everybody can twerk, but I can twerk, you can twerk. But when I twerk, it won't be a cultural appropriation. It'll be just me being a human. So you can still do your cultural things, but I can enjoy your cultural things too without being judged.
appropriation and enjoying somebody's culture.
Let Miley shake. What did you say?
Cultural
Time out.
appropriation and enjoying somebody's culture are not the same thing.
But
then
society.
it would be the same thing.
Just for the clarification,
Because there would be
the
no
difference?
dividing line. It's for
Okay.
everybody.
A perfect example for cultural appropriation, I think it was around the 20s when black musicians were just killing the jazz scene.
Yeah.
White people started playing jazz as well, and they kicked the black people out of getting jobs.
Yeah.
So what the black people did was just so lit. They made the music so complex that the white individuals couldn't copy it.
Yeah.
So if you're the best, it don't matter what race you are, they're gonna snatch you up. But yeah, that's cultural appropriation. Trying to pretty much take something. It's pretty much stealing. Taking something from somebody and pretty much not giving credit or not
Calling
allowing
it
them to
your own.
benefit off of it, and disrespecting the thing as well.
There will be no credit to give anymore if we're not acknowledging races. So, in a post-racial society, technically culture and anyone's culture is everyone's culture at that point. Is it not?
So
That's hard, just because like I've noticed a weird thing in the U.S. where your grandma would probably agree with this, where there's African Americans and non-American black individuals, people from Africa, people from the Caribbeans, where they just don't connect
Yeah.
for certain reasons. And even though I was born and raised in America, I still have, of course, my roots. And that made me that made a disconnection between some black Americans here. So I think even though we are the same color and the same race, there can still be a disconnect just because of where we come from.
Right.
And the things we learned, the things we picked up, even the foods we eat, even the values we keep. And that's regardless of race. That comes to an ethnicity thing now.
Mm-hmm. That's why I value individuality so much.
I have a question really quick.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
In terms of the law, what, in your expertise, what do you think we would have to do in order to get to a post-racial society? Like, not theoretically, but legally. What are there any specific laws that come to mind that would have to be disbanded?
Stop
Or,
being
like,
racist.
What do you see from that perspective?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And then just to unpack it a little bit, when I think about laws and I make comments that racism is codified, xenophobia is codified, Islamophobia is codified, it's not open. It doesn't say black people will be jailed for minor drug offenses at a higher rate. So there's coded language, there's situational factors worked into the law, the case law, discretion, etc. And so what we really have to do is examine almost every law, every policy, every conversation for its impact on black and brown people, and then neutralize that somehow or affirmatively change it. So when you look at, for example, it's not a secret that drug offenses disproportionately impact black and brown men, but how do we change that in this post-racial society so that it's neutralized? How do we change that?
Right.
When you talk about living in the inner city and the way the police officers interact with people who live in Springfield versus the way they interact with people who live in East Meadow who have done the same things, whether the district court in Springfield handles the same types of issues and people the same way they would the district court in Palmer. How do you change that? I think you'd have to almost have a shared set of values of calling it out and deconstructing it affirmatively, which is ridiculously hard. We talk about paying reparations. Some of that is to make up for the years and years and years of systemic oppression. And fixing it, like you said, okay, we're all going to do the reset button and everybody's going to be treated the same, means going back to the 1800s and doing a restart, which is ridiculously hard. It's trying to figure out why homeowners who keep their street in 01109 all beautiful and immaculate, and you could take that same street and put it in 16 acres and you see that there's $100,000 wealth gap between 01109 and 01118. How do we codify that and fix that and equalize that when nothing is different except the race of the people who live on that side of town. So when we get to a post-racial society, those houses will be worth the same amount of money. Just read a statistic that came out today that said that the black middle class, the median income for the black middle class compared to the white middle class, the gap has increased significantly. I'm going to get you the dollar amount.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's scary. Hold on.
I'm scared.
Wait for it.
It's scary. In 2016, the median wealth of white households was $171,000. That is 10 times the wealth of black households of $17,100, which is a larger gap when measured in 2007. Let's think about that. We're talking about middle class. We're talking about people with bachelor's degrees. We're talking about people with master's degrees. And you see that there's such a huge disparity in income between white people and black people today. This is today. We're not talking theoretical. We're not talking in the old days. How do we fix that in a post-racial society?
That's a systemic and part by part kind of fixer-upper, because there's so many factors that go into why they're, why this middle class family is making so much less than the other one.
It's so much
there's
less.
so much that goes.
We're not talking about $1,000. We're not talking about $10,000. We are talking about 10 times more.
That's a
I
lot.
feel like it goes back to my original question. What would white people do in a post-racial society? Just like how, a month apart we have these huge terrorist attacks in America, but one gets called a lone shooter because he's white and the other is immediately a terrorist because he's of the Islamic faith. You get what I'm saying? Or not the Islamic faith, but acting like he is because that's not of Islam.
But wouldn't white people benefit in a post-racial America?
I don't think so because
the,
don't have
the illusion of conclusion. Like we make you now we got you feeling like you're included. You're a part of the human race. We're all one. All lives matter. But secretly behind closed doors,
It's not post-racial.
it's an illusion.
It's not post-racial.
I think on paper.
I think they're benefiting because they'll be allowed to do whatever they're doing now without having to be called out for the whole cultural appropriation and things like that. But in terms of the systems that they're using to get ahead now, it doesn't exist anymore if we're on an equal playing field. So they don't get to. So my name, I have privilege just because my name is Tiffany and not Shaniqua. Do you get what I'm saying? Or Shaitia. So it's like, that's the point. Like now it doesn't matter if you're a Thomas or a Billy Bob. You're the same as an Antoine or a Dre. So it's like, I don't see how it could benefit them to that. I feel like there's a lot of systems in place where if you are white, even just going to different countries, or not even, because we're doing it in America. In DC, we are having this huge, say we because I went to Howard, but we're having this huge issue with gentrification, as most of the country is. Still, when I was living on a couple streets up from Howard that is supposed to be the hood, it was being gentrified, and there's a lot of white people moving in. There, I kid you not, there would still be crime at the black and the Hispanic whites. But for some reason, no one will touch the white people. White people could walk out at 2 a.m. at night, not in danger at all. Just lottie-dottie, not even looking around, headphones blasting, just chilling. And a black person could be down the street, and they're the one that's going to get in trouble. So it's like,
because even the simplest thug, you don't touch white people.
That whole fear is going to get lost.
You don't touch them.
Everyone is
especially young white people.
in a post-racial society.
I want to touch on something though. So in Springfield we talk about black and brown, right? I grew up with all black, and I'm brown. And to categorize. The problem is that I think that we're trying to fight the same type of oppressive issues, but when we check off on the race, we don't have a race. We're not black. We're not white. Yeah. The problem is if
you're of Hispanic descent.
Right.
But
you can't be black.
Well, no, but like you said the robot was Middle Eastern, and they called it white. If you check the definition on the U.S. website, a Puerto Rican is white. Yep. Period. So when people say white, it's like it's the Puerto Ricans too. But then we're broke. And we don't have the resources that the other people have, and we don't have, you know what I mean? So then we're like, but we don't get that.
Yeah.
And then the blacks, because the blacks have been fighting this for so long, you know what I mean? Like, so long that you guys have made, in my opinion, a lot of headway in the right direction. Not enough, of course. You'll never have enough. But I feel like you're going in the right direction, whereas your voice is heard, whereas, you know, some people will say, but that's not our issues, you know, as a Puerto Rican. And then there's also divide within us, and it's like, no, we are on that side because we're being oppressed, and then some of them are like, no, we belong on this side. So I think that also identification, as far as brown, I think we have our own identification issues within ourselves, period.
It's the whole idea of being Afro-Latina and how that is such a, or Latinx or whatever you want to define it, but having that Afro first, because there's this horrible meme that's going around that has a picture of the devastation in Puerto Rico, and it's like a caption saying, it sucks that a hurricane had to teach Puerto Ricans that they're black. Because if you ask a Puerto Rican or a Dominican or someone from El Salvador that has the same skin color as me or darker, they will not say they are black. They are anything but black, and there's a lot of history that goes behind that. Black
ancestry.
Yeah.
But when it became like certain kind of like Indians, you know, we had the Taino Indians. Yeah. So for us, that's our sect. So what that was made up of, yes, all our culture is from Africa. You know what I mean? I mean everything, even the food, everything comes from Africa. But it's kind of like if we all stayed in this room for 2 years together, we would become one people with no differences because it's just what it is. It's geographical. So I don't think that it's that. Maybe a lot of them haven't been taught the history. Yeah. Which is true. You know, how we all came from Morocco. You know, the Congo, and I got taught all of this. Yeah. I got educated this way. But people don't understand that Puerto Ricans, and I only speak from Puerto Ricans. I know there's Latins, but I can only speak from Puerto Rican point of view. We only came to Springfield in the 50s. Yep. And we didn't know how to speak the language. So we didn't know what war it is. We was oppressed and didn't even know how. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? So my mom taught me, I don't care if they belittle you, degrade you, whatever it is, you get that paycheck, you come home. Yep. You know, so whereas, you know, my African American counterparts, they were like, you're not talking to me like that. Yeah. And they'll walk off the job. Yeah. And you know, we didn't build that courage up as a people, I think, until recently maybe, because you know, we're able to articulate our words, whereas before they didn't understand us. So I think we're kind of lost in our own little regard, you know, regardless of how much we do. Yeah. And you know, and oppression is what kind of binds us all together, you know.
Can I support him on some of the points that you made, and to piggyback off of you? So I do a lot of work around Islamophobia and oppression, racial, religious-based intolerance, and one of the conversations I'm starting to have with people, particularly immigrants, is the North Africans, some Asians come and check the census box white, and some of them are my clients, and they're straight up from Egypt, and they're checking the box white. Yeah. But yet your grandmother is on some Muslim ban and can't get here, so you might mark white, which helps increase the race rolls for white, but you don't have white privilege. No. You have black oppression, and that is something that they don't understand. So when you come here and you're thinking, oh my gosh, well, I'm not from Somalia, so thank God I'm white, and you're marking the box, you don't understand that you just got played. Yeah. Because if you are Arab or an Asian doctor, you come here and you live in Longmeadow, or you live in Wilbraham, and you think that you are white because that's what they're encouraging you to do, but yet you can't go bury your grandmother. Yeah. You get a rude awakening, and it's similar to what you're saying too, where Hispanics and particularly Puerto Ricans have an identity crisis. That is systemic, that is institutional, that is on purpose, okay? And one of the reasons that your black counterparts can walk off the job is because, like I said, even in the Muslim community, when you have 30% of American Muslims are African American, as in slave trade, African Americans, we walk the earth a little bit differently here, because I know I have privilege when I say that my ancestors built this country. And if you're a newer immigrant from the 1960s something, you can't say that. Exactly. So you might feel like you're imposing, but I changed that conversation around and started saying that is my American story, but if you are Muslim, that is your American story. If you are American, that is your American story. So you can talk about religion and say, Islam has been in this country since the natives, and then again since the slave trade, because 20% of all African enslaved people were Muslim. So tell that story. It doesn't have to be just your story. It doesn't have to match this. It doesn't have to match your papers in terms of what your line says. You have American history. You're here. Own all of the American history. Own all of it. And don't apologize for it. And that's the conversation that I'm having with Muslim immigrants about how they're feeling and not settling in, feeling very welcome right now. Oh, I'm not going home. I'm not going. There's no place for me to go. So that's not even a conversation we're having in our house.
Exactly, and that's interesting that you bring it up, because the Puerto Ricans are, some consider themselves West Indian, others don't, but that's the same type of flow in terms of Hartford, Connecticut has one of the largest Caribbean populations, and so is Boston and New York City, obviously, and it's the same thing in terms of immigration and coming to this country and just working so hard, because you know what it's like back home, like you know where you were, your parents and from, you know what's not there for you to go back to, versus African Americans have always been here, and to a given extent you are entitled to this country, because there's no, they can't say you're not a citizen, they can't say, they can treat you like you're a second class citizen, but you're still going to be American. And so I don't know, in a post-racial America, I just think there's too many things, because even if we're black, we might not all be the same religion. And even if we're the same religion, we might not all be the same denomination. So it's just like, there's so many different things, because a black Baptist church is different than a white Baptist church. So there's there's so much racial, like, ingrained in every aspect of our society, that it's like, how do you just take that away? Like, what do you do? Do you not read the history books? Because, like, if I read a history book, if there was no race and it was all, the chicken tastes the same in that kind of analogy, and then I just read how to make curry chicken, or, you know what I mean? Like, once I get that information, that post-racial stuff is gone again. Like, I'm about to go start it back up again, because I'm going to have that passion, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it's like the brother right here said, we don't talk about enough about what our similarities are.
Right.
So instead of saying a stop the violence rally, why don't we have a peace rally? You know what I mean? And instead of saying this is how we're different, well, this is how we're the same. You know,
intersection.
Yeah. You know, I teach alternative to violence. Alternatives to violence. I mean, they put me in a room inside the jail for 3 days with violent offenders.
Okay.
So I sit with them for 3 days. I'm listening to, some of them are doing 20 years, some of them are doing 2 months. You know, that whole range. But what happens is, you know, they start evolving and thinking how we're the same. So these are dudes that might have been fighting in the jail, now all of a sudden are hugging each other and doing workshops because they both have daughters. You know, because they both have mothers that were sick, or they both are in jail. They're both in the same hill. But what we do is we just focus on the similarities so much that, you know, we did this thing called crossover. We did it with teenagers, and one of the questions was how many of you know someone or have personally been sexually violated? And in a room of like 30 teens, 20 of them walked over, 23. And what happened after that? Girls that didn't like each other, no, they went into the bathroom, they were crying, they rubbed each other's backs and came out best friends because they knew they had the same pain. Yeah. And I think if we start talking about our pain and say, you know, this what hurts me, this what makes me feel less able to succeed, well, we got to start saying that, you know, this makes me feel less, and start addressing those issues. What makes you feel less of a person? What makes you feel less that you cannot attain? And then try to find someone who has broken some of those barriers and maybe get educated from those people. I think that what happens is people cross over, get past those barriers, and don't send messages back. Gosh. You know, and I can name names, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just not gonna do that. But I you know, like such as myself, I grew up in the housing projects. We didn't have no food. I had 2 pairs of pants in 6th grade, literally. You know, my father took all the money for himself. My mom's was struggling with us. She did what she had to do. But I go back and I show people how to get life insurance for free. I show them how to buy houses with no money down. You know, I show them how to get fuel assistance even if you make $40,000. You know, like things that'll boost us up even a little bit to have say in certain categories that, you know, we've been able to sit down with senators now and explain these things, and these dudes are like, yo, they're not going away.
Yeah,
it's not that they agree with us. They're like, all right, if we do this for them, will they go away? We're gonna do this for them, and they pick and choose now, you know. And I think that we get a little more bullish with our requests and have a clear definition of what's going to help us grow as a people. And once we have that, move in that direction, you know. And it's not easy. It's not something that can be done overnight or nothing like that. But it's what we have now. And if we don't address what we have, what we want, we'll never know, because we're not starting from where we are. Some of us have the illusion that we're somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in rooms with all these people, right? But I still gotta go buy 3 coats for 3 kids. And I still gotta buy 3 meals times 3 per day. You know, and they might not worry about that because they might have had a trust fund. Generational wealth, where my people came and we were farming for $4 an hour to feed the whole family. Where's our wealth coming from? It's not. It's not before me. Hopefully it's after me. Maybe not. You know?
Not with those statistics I just read.
Yeah, we gotta go hard. And I don't play ball. You know what I mean? Like, what am I gonna do?
I
know what I'm saying?
I don't write that.
I'm just saying, like, what am I gonna do to make? What am I gonna do to?
Entertainment industry.
Yeah, and then we also, the other piece that I don't like too, and I'm guilty of it when I was younger, is living a lifestyle you can't afford.
Yes.
And then you teach that to the kids. Now the kids are like, I'm gonna get those Jordans every week. And no, you're not. No, you're not. You probably not. You better be worried about that rent. You know, and I think that we just gotta prioritize a little different. And some of us just gotta humble down a little bit more.
That's interesting. The thing about oh man, I don't want to jump in, but the thing about poverty is that sometimes those Jordans are within the reach. The mortgage isn't.
Yes.
Right.
And sometimes it feeds you. I know that you should be more
Makes you feel
disciplined.
good, yeah.
Yes. But I feel I have this different level of compassion now where I understand why you want those Jordans and you live in the middle of the hood. Yes, you have something that you're proud of, a piece of property, an item, because you're not going to get that house. Because guess what?
Right.
Just read those statistics that say good luck with that. But can you get the damn Jordans?
If a post-racial,
And you can.
if a post-racial society involved equity in systems like education and things like that, maybe I would be a little more excited for it. But I don't know. I just don't see it happening. For example, so I went through the Springfield public school system. So I went to Lincoln, then Chestnut, then Commerce. I was in the talented, quote unquote, and gifted program. Shaitia, Chestnut Accelerated Middle School. But like more, yes. So we went through those programs, and we're supposedly the best of the best, right? I get to Howard my freshman year. And I'm in my English class. I turn in my first paper, and my professor writes, "See me in office hours," right? And so I go there office hours. I'm like, "Yeah, professor, did I get an A?" All excited.
What you were used to.
Which I am so used to. And then my professor looks at me, and she was just like, "Listen, your content was amazing. I love the story. You have a beautiful message, but I don't know who taught you how to write." I'm like, "What? I've been writing for like 12 years. What do you mean?" And she's like,
start naming teachers.
And she was like, "You have not been writing. You have been putting words on a page, but this isn't writing." And here I am, talented and gifted, international baccalaureate program. No, I think I graduated like number 3 in my class. Like I am the top that Springfield has to offer.
Yes.
I get with the general population of the country, and I don't know how to write. I don't know the difference between a semicolon or whatever you got me.
So imagine the
My
average
professor,
person.
right. My professor then gives me 2 books. Her grammar book that she made herself and the Howard University grammar book. And I just had to drill it and drill it and drill it and fill that gap so that I could be successful in college. And it's just like, that has so much to do with being of my race and being in a low socioeconomic status and the systemic of how schools are funded. We don't have property. How is property taxes supposed to fund our schools? You know what I mean? So if a post-racial society can fix all of that, then maybe I'll look forward to it. But I was supposedly the best of the best and then ended up being at the bottom like that. Everything was taken away and I had to start over, humble myself, real quick, or else I would have had to drop out. I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
So it's like, if a post-racial society can offer me that kind of equity, then sure, but I don't think it would. I just think it gives people freedom to say, hey, I want to wear Native American garb today or something, you know what I mean? That's what I think people think of when post-racial. I could just do culturally fun things now and not have to worry about who's going to comment on my Facebook feed or go viral for being, like, oppressive. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna get there because of the fact that no one's thinking about the actual systems that are racial that needs to be taken away. They're just thinking about the frivolous culture things that we really care about, but it's not what's killing us.
I think that every demographic will always have their own agenda, and because of that, a post-racial society is impossible, just because when you're seeking out your own agenda, eventually you're going to cross hairs. And because especially when you're in an area with scarcity of resources,
Right.
like eventually you're going to have that argument. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible to be allies, and that's why I said earlier I love the word intersectionality, because I can not know what it's like to be a woman, but I can show up at a feminist rally and support because I know what it's like to be marginalized.
I'm not Puerto Rican, but I was raised on Chapin Terrace in the North End.
Exactly.
So, like, I know, you know what I mean?
So it's possible for us to support one another's agendas, etc. But I feel like eventually it's gonna get to a point where we're at that meet. I show up at the North End meeting, or you show up at the Eastern Avenue. I don't know why I keep trying to meet Eastern Avenue, but you show up at the Eastern. You show up at the Eastern Avenue meeting, and we like, yo, the city is to talk about their budget for education. They're thinking about putting more money into such and such school that's in the North End. But we want them to put that money in our school. Our school needs it.
Yeah.
And then eventually that's where the argument is going to come. And then you're going to be like, no, our school needs it. Our kids are... And then, you know, because there's always going to be that...
Yeah, but that brings...
I don't know.
That brings us back to something, you know, my younger sister Lou, she drills this into me every time we start talking about this. She's like, you gotta remember what Japheth taught y'all. The 99% control the 1%, and the 1% just stops each other from growing.
Perfect impersonation.
Period.
The voice
Period.
too.
You know, God bless his soul. But basically, why don't we have that conversation now? And that's the elephant in the room, and the reason why I keep alluding to, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm a Latin. You just said the North End, let's call it the Hill. The way we look at it when we think about resources to be divided, we think about the Hill and we think about the North End, right?
Right.
So why don't we have that conversation now? Like you said, certain people have a certain agenda of what success looks like for them, while another community has a different agenda of what success looks like for them. But why don't we have those open conversations? And me and you, when we met for coffee the other day, we talked about this. In 1992, 93 was when it ended, but even in Hartford and Springfield, it was blacks and Puerto Ricans did not coexist very well.
No.
It was very violent. It was, if I went down a hallway and there was a group of blacks, I had to turn around because it was going to stomp me out, and vice versa. We've grown from that because we realized, wait, we're all in this 1% together. We're all broke. All our daughters are going through this. All our sons are going through this. You know, we're all getting pulled over and locked up. We're all being, blackballed from real money. So ultimately, why don't we have those conversations? I think that we're at a place now that we can have those conversations, because how will we know what our agendas are if we don't start speaking them?
Literally the same.
Yeah.
Like, they are the same.
But where they're different, that might mean we might support each other on those differences and say, hey, that's not us, but we with you on that.
Yeah.
And y'all like, well, that ain't us. Like, we don't, like, y'all don't have the language barrier that we have. That's one example. Yeah. So y'all might be like, but that's all right, though. It's not fair that because they can't, and it's kind of like showing support for each other. Whereas, I've even heard, comments, people say, Puerto Ricans jumped on the civil rights movement. No, we were kind of forced in that too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, when I was young and I didn't think, color, then I'm thinking we all have the same issues, like Tupac said. Oh, y'all come here and y'all want us to live with the murderers. We scared of the murderers too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to be around the dope dealers either. We don't want dope fiends all around us either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, y'all think we want this? No, we don't want that, but we don't have the resources. And I think that we need to start working together to share resources. There are real resources. There's the ability to get so much funding for so many things, and I think people are scared. It's a scarcity mentality. That if I eat a piece of pie, she can't eat one either.
Eat it, yeah.
You know, that means I'm gonna be the only one in this room to get my pie, and I'm not telling y'all about the pie. But meanwhile, I got a whole factory of pies that goes bad because I wouldn't share them.
Yep.
Right.
And that's what's going on. People are taking a little bit. They find a big treasure, they do this, and they run out.
Hold on to it.
Yeah, they don't even realize that there's enough treasure for everybody to be okay. And I think that's we got to get past that. We got to get past that.
To answer your question, trust.
Trust.
One of the reasons why we haven't had those conversations. The reason why we black people have been growing this dislike towards white liberals in this past decade of the woke era or whatever, is because they'll say, hey, intersectionality, I relate with you and I sympathize with you and I support you,
my
but you're not there.
My grandson is interracial.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm like the least racist in my family or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I met
My friends are black.
But they won't show up to defend us, and they won't show up at they might show up at the march, but they're not there when the riot breaks out.
But no,
they're not there.
They are there.
Legislation.
We're not there. I think that's why I think black and brown people take so much responsibility for what white people do. For example, like we just talked about the legal aspects of race. We can also talk about the psychological aspects of race. We are not keeping ourselves oppressed. We are not keeping these systems alive. It is them. We don't have the control. We don't have the power. It is them. So it's as simple as this. I don't need you to be at the Black Lives Matter march. That's for my people to feel each other and to comfort each other in our times of need. I need you to sit at Thanksgiving, and when Uncle Billy Bob talks about these niggers down the street and what he's going to do at the KKK rally next weekend, I need you to stop that. Because I will never be in his presence. I will never be in that circle. And I'll never be able to end that psychology. That's when they're most comfortable. That's when they're spreading these vibes and these words and teaching the systemic oppression that keeps on going. We're like, hey, why are all these white people voting for Trump? Because their dads and their uncles and their grandpas, they're still there telling them why niggers are bad. Do you get what I'm saying?
So if you support us in public, support us in private.
Right. You need to support us in private. That's where it matters. When y'all are having these when you're trying to figure out what college you're going to, and then you matriculate through your uncle's, dad's, grandfather's university, and you're now on the board, and you hear people talk about how affirmative action is giving everybody, all black people's excuses to be whatever, you're stopping that conversation and saying, no, they earned higher than all of us. They just didn't have the name. They just didn't have the money. They just didn't donate a library to the school. Do you get what I'm saying? It's the conversations that we can be a part of that's going to help, that will stop oppression, but we can't be there because we're not accepted. It's like we're not in the room. We're not at the table. We will never have a seat at that table.
But part of that conversation also needs to be if you're going to be at those tables, in those places, in those spaces where you can have those conversations. And I'm talking about places of power like boards, like, committees, like councils, all these different places where we're not represented because we're not. Invite somebody. Say, hey, I'm going to step down so that this very qualified person who's from the community, who represents their community, who, is more well-deserving than I am just because my dad donated a library to the school, say, I'm going to let this person have my seat and be able to speak for her own or his own group.
I completely agree, but at the same time, and maybe this is just a conspiracy in the back of my head, but I think a lot of these systems are just for show. I see the things that we are invited to, the things that we can have our 5-minute speeches at, but the real conversations are happening behind the scenes. Yeah. That's at this gentleman's club. That's at this in DC, the golf courses and those kind of those are where the big decisions are happening. And then they go to the committee meeting and say, oh yeah, let's hear your 5 minutes. Tell the chair to let you talk.
But that's where the original piece of when you're at, Thanksgiving dinner talking to your racist uncle, you're having those conversations there, and two, advocating for those spaces for us because we're not going anywhere, like Freddy said. Like, we're not going anywhere. And people, I think, this is just me, that as Black and brown identifying folks, we are more resilient and we are more ready to continue fighting until like we literally cannot throw any more punches.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer in that, like that it is achievable for it can to turn into like now I'm at the golf club too,
and I think that's
beating all y'all in the game while I'm getting my point across. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that's.
Best way to do it.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, you lost Charlie.
Charlie.
I think
Sorry.
that goes either two ways though. Like for example, Jay-Z is like finally getting there with his 444 and what's better than whatever credit. You know what I mean? That kind of thing where we're finally sending those messages. But the thing about Black and brown people, and I don't like putting us all in a bunch, most of us, when we make it, we make it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're no longer a part of the we. So it's like, that's why I feel hesitant to tell people to make these goals to get a seat at the table, because it changes people, and a lot of people aren't always coming back and bringing people back with you. And I'm not telling you to be like MC Hammer, because you can't bring the hood with you, but at the same time, like there has to be some middle ground where you're able to be successful and reach back at the same time and share the treasure and be able to call people out on their BS when it is BS.
But wait, before we continue, we're gonna first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out. This has been very informative. This has been you all have been genuine. This has been just a great back to back argument, which seems like a pretty unified point of view, as I can say.
Side eye to me.
Yeah. Except
He did his job.
Alienate you.
I'll see y'all.
Any last minute thoughts on this debate as we close up? Start with you, brother.
Aaron.
Alright.
Right there.
Like I said in the beginning,
I like your point.
it's
by the
still
way.
.00001, but that still means it's possible. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't technically think it's even a good thing, just because diversity and culture and just color and just being able to enjoy the senses. Just because, like, if something is post-racial, they have to neglect what they can see, what they can hear, what they can feel, what they can smell, what they can taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything becomes bland and nothing tastes good.
Unseasoned chicken.
Caribbean Sea, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
But to that point,
Bacon shock?
like I said, it's technically possible, but it's not necessary at all.
Brother Fred.
In order to go post-racial, I think we have to go post-ignorance, and
That's a bar.
I don't.
Can you repeat?
In order to go post-race, I think we really do have to go post-ignorance, which means, certain things might make you uncomfortable about me. Certain things about you might make me uncomfortable about you, regardless of what it is. Sometimes we don't share those things. Sometimes we do. But I think that we just have to start with being real. Like I said, a lot of this music has conditioned us to pretend that we are who we're not, and to live that life. And then you hit an age of maturity where you're like, oh man, that's really some clown stuff to do. and not only that, I'm actually setting everybody else behind me to fail because I'm painting an illusion I can't keep up with. So I think I'm sorry, I have been in a lot of those rooms and I have made my way to a lot of these boards, and but we made way that MGM is hiring people with criminal backgrounds. I mean, like, that stuff that took us a couple years to work on and really say, no, we're here, we want to work, and then like just today, MGM, which is $1 billion organization, which is going to be spending billions of organizations, met with people from the Black community to say, tell us the businesses we can do business with.
Yeah.
And the Latin community. And in the Latin community, we're like, we're not ready.
Yeah.
So I think that the other piece is that we have to have more skilled jobs between us. Like I'm a licensed real estate broker, you're an attorney, and everybody else has their own trade and education. And I think that we have to start just leading with who you are, with your beliefs and your morals, and let other people kind of like label you. But I think that, we got this thing called no defense when we're working political campaigns. And it's like, well, the more energy they put into trying to stop us means the more energy they're not putting into beating us.
You're right.
So It's kind of like just taking that approach, and sometimes, I mean, I swallow a lot of things, man. I'll be honest with you, man. I was standing outside a building one time as a real estate broker, and police approached me. I was in the house one time. They threw me down on the ground. They put a gun in my head. I'm showing the house. I didn't have a business card. I had a big chain on me and everything, but you know, and I had urban gear on. But I'm like, I pull out my business card. I'm like, you know, like, here, look, I'm a broker. You know, but I think that once we have these voices, that they don't just like if this was a room full of executive white men, that you're still saying the same thing you're saying today.
Yep.
Because I think that's what happens is that you might act tough towards me, but as soon as this man comes in, now all of a sudden you a shy, bashful person, and it's like, nah, me. I've gotten kicked out of these rooms for saying things. I'm the one who goes into the room and says, where's the elephant? That's what we need to talk about. All the rest of it is pointless. So I think a little more courage, like you said, we're not going anywhere too. Like, what can you really do to us? When you voice your opinion, the only thing they do is get mad. You know, like, and you be like, yeah, and what? You know, what can they really do? And I think that we need to get over that fear, because but it's a real fear from what history has told us, that if you're outspoken, there are consequences to it. But I think we need to realize that they can't take us all out.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's just real simple. They could take me right now in the parking lot. Y'all still gonna keep it going. What they really do?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And we need to keep that in mind. You know, the force that we are as a whole.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And we have to feel that force. We have to feel
it.
united.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is part of the conversation that we need to keep having. So whether or not we're going to be a post-racial America, post-racial society, post-racial country, or universe or world, I don't think so. You know, I'm a Sunni Orthodox practicing Muslim, and the messenger of God, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, 1,500 years ago, in his final sermon, gave directives, and one of his directives was to remember a white is not superior to a black is not superior to a white, an Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, non-Arab is not superior to an Arab. Why was he saying that 1,500 years ago? And everything that he did was constructed, and everything that he said, may God's blessings be upon him, was to be a message for all of mankind, Muslim or non-Muslim, that day going forward. So if he's putting out those reminders in his absolute last address to the world, that meant that this was going to be something that we carried throughout the existence of humankind. So we always have to remember, it's going to be a test, it's going to be a struggle, it is something we're going to have to own and work with. This issue of race and superiority and non-superiority. It's just one of the, I think, the challenges as human beings that we are going to be tested by our nature.
I definitely think that, you know, kind of just to piggy off what you said, like, it's going to be a challenge. I think that we might be able to get to a point where it's eventually a little less of an elephant, say, or like, you know, okay, so I acknowledge that you are who you are, but it's still going to be what keeps us separated, because like Freddy said earlier, we naturally as humans, we always find something to divide us. When you think back of when, you know, the tribes that we learned about in school on the native lands and the different areas of the world and how different we look in our tribes. So I don't think that's a bad thing. And I know, like I said in the beginning, I'm very proud of where I come from and who I am and how I look and how my son's identity, my identity. Like, that just makes me me. And similar to what Aaron said earlier, like, you'd be boring if you were all the same.
That's true.
Y'all remember the episode of Fairly Odd Parents where he wished everybody was a blob?
Yeah.
Why are we all connected?
There's also an episode of Rick and Morty on Utopia, and they start like choosing body parts to start arguing over and dividing over, like you were saying. But yeah, for me, if someone asked me, do you want to live in a post-racial society, I would ask why. Does my blackness make you uncomfortable? Like, whenever I hear post-racial, it makes me feel like you want me to forget who I am, like Shaitia is saying. And I will start I will end where I started in terms of recognizing my ancestry and everyone who died, all the names that I can never call because it was taken, because it was erased. I'm not just living for Tiffany Alicia Porter. I'm living for everyone who's ever lived in my ancestry. So for me to live in a post-racial society, I will be disrespecting my history, and I will never feel comfortable doing that. I will never disrespect who I am, even if I can't call on their names. A post-racial society for me, systemically, sounds amazing. If my identity as a black woman isn't going to interfere with whether or not I can get a job, or whether or not my sons can walk down the street in a hoodie, as Terrence alluded to earlier, that sounds great. But at the same time, I will always be black. I am black now. I was black, and everything that comes out of me will be black. So I am not going to give that up for someone else's comfort in terms of them being colorblind, in terms of them saying, oh, there's no differences. No, there's a big difference. I'm black, and that's it. So that's just my final thought.
Brother Aaron, back me up on this.
Polemic.
www.polemicpeoples.com.
Polemic.
At Polemic Peoples on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Polemic.
Hashtag the People Space for Debate.
Polemic.
Hashtag Break Out the Podium.
Polemic.